I never thought I'd be the guy who'd find himself in a situation like this. You know, the one where you think everything is perfect, only for the world to come crashing down around you. My name's Jake, and I was married to Melissa for 5 years. We had dreams, plans, a future mapped out with all those beautiful blueprints that young couples usually make. But somewhere along the way, the plot twisted, and I was left holding the pieces. In the beginning, everything seemed right. We were that couple that friends envied. Good jobs, nice home, plenty of friends. Melissa was the life of the party, always laughing, always the center of attention. I'm an architect, and I would often joke that I was just building our future, while she was the one making it vibrant and colorful. But then, slowly, things began to shift. At first, I thought it was just life getting in the way. Work was busy for both of us. I'd come home late after long hours, and she'd be preoccupied with her own commitments. But then I noticed the subtle differences. The way she would take longer to respond to my texts, a sudden spike in her late-night phone calls, or how she would often come home smelling different. I brushed it off at first. I mean, who was I to jump to conclusions? I wanted to trust her, but one day it hit me like a bolt of lightning. I was sitting in my home office going through some old files when I stumbled upon a receipt for a hotel on the other side of town. The date, 2 weeks prior. The room, a suite. I remember feeling my heart drop into my stomach. I tried to convince myself it was a mistake. Maybe she was booking something for a friend, but deep down I knew better. That evening I confronted her. I had all the evidence laid out like an architect presenting a proposal. The hotel receipt was the centerpiece, but it was more than that. It was the changes in her demeanor, the odd hours, the lies that had piled up like bricks, building a wall between us. "Melissa," I said, my voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of hurt. "We need to talk about this." She looked at me, confusion flickering across her face, but there was a hint of something else, fear, guilt. I pressed on. "Did you go to that hotel?" Her face went pale, and for a split second I thought she might confess, but instead she went into defensive mode. "It's not what you think, Jake. I was meeting a friend. We were planning a surprise for you." A surprise? I wished I could laugh about it. I wanted to scream instead. A surprise in a hotel suite. "Come on, Melissa. Just tell me the truth." She started crying, the tears rolling down her cheeks, but there was something hollow about her expression. "I didn't cheat. You're imagining things. I just need some space." Space. It was as if she was gaslighting me, flipping my world upside down while trying to paint me as the villain. My mind was racing, and I felt anger bubbling up inside. How could she stand there and lie to me so easily? I was gutted. I pushed for the truth, and she pushed back with excuses and deflections. It was like talking to a brick wall, and instead of clarity, it left me feeling more confused and betrayed. That night, I went to bed. Alone, feeling like a stranger in my own home. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts. I had trusted her, built my life around her, and now it felt like I was left with nothing but shattered hopes and a lie. My heart could barely take it, and I knew this was only the beginning of a long road ahead. In the days that followed, I went through a whirlwind of emotions. I was angry, hurt, confused, and most of all, I felt betrayed. It was like being thrust into a storm without warning. I kept replaying our last conversation, her words echoing in my mind. I had to figure out what to do next, a plan for revenge or a way to confront this mess head-on. But first, I had to accept what was happening in my life, even if it felt unreal. As days turned into weeks, I tried to piece together what had happened. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Melissa's behavior had been off for a while. It wasn't just the hotel incident. It was the little things that had been building up. The way she would spend hours on her phone, laughing at texts I couldn't see, or the way she avoided my gaze when I asked about her day. It all began to add up like a blueprint of betrayal that I couldn't ignore. I decided I needed more evidence. I couldn't just confront her again without something concrete. I felt like a detective in my own life, and it was a role I never wanted to take on. One evening, I went to her favorite cafe to meet a friend, and I casually asked the barista if she had seen Melissa there recently. The response was innocent enough. She had been coming in a lot, always with a tall, dark-haired guy. My stomach sank. I was ready to confront Melissa, but I needed to know who this guy was. Over the next few days, I took to my phone, doing a little digging. I went through Melissa's social media, something I hadn't done before. She had always been open about her life online, but now I found myself scrolling through her posts with a magnifying glass. It wasn't long before I stumbled upon a photo of her with that same tall, dark-haired guy. They were at a concert, arms around each other, laughing. The caption read, "Best night with my favorite person." I felt the air leave my lungs as anger washed over me. I needed to see this guy, know who I was dealing with. That weekend, I took a drive to the cafe where I had heard she spent time. I waited outside, watching, and sure enough, there they were, walking out together, her head thrown back in laughter while he leaned in closer than I ever could. My heart raced, the blood pounding in my ears. I couldn't just sit there while she flaunted her betrayal. As they walked towards their cars, I jumped out of mine and the words came tumbling out. "Melissa," I shouted, and she turned, her expression shifting from joy to horror. The guy looked at me, confused. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice dripping with arrogance. "I'm her husband," I shot back, and I could see her eyes widen, a mix of shock and fear. "Jake, wait," she called out, but I ignored her. I was on fire, fueled by rage. "What the hell is going on here? Who is he?" She opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off. "Don't bother with more lies. I've seen the pictures. We need to discuss what you've done." The guy stepped closer to Melissa as if trying to shield her. "Man, you need to chill. She doesn't owe you anything." I could feel the anger boil inside me, but I held back. I didn't want to turn this into a scene. "You're right. She doesn't owe me anything, but I think she owes me the truth." Melissa shifted uncomfortably, looking between me and him. "Jake, please, you don't understand." I cut her off again. "No, you don't understand. This isn't just a misunderstanding. You've been cheating on me. You've made a mockery of our marriage." The confrontation was electric, and I felt all eyes on us. I was furious, humiliated, and heartbroken. I had wanted to believe that Melissa would fight for our marriage, but she stood there frozen, looking guilty and scared. "Let's talk somewhere private," she finally said, her voice shaking. I agreed, leading her to a nearby park, away from prying eyes and judgmental stares. Once we were alone, I unleashed all my pent-up frustration. "You think this is a game? You were my partner, my best friend. How could you betray me like this?" Her face twisted with regret and she began to cry. "I messed up, Jake. I never meant for it to go this far. I was just confused." Confused, I couldn't believe her words. "Confused, you were sleeping with someone else. How is that confused?" "I thought I was doing it for us, for the thrill. I wanted something exciting, something different." "You were so focused on work and I felt neglected," she said, her words tumbling out like a poorly crafted defense. I felt my heart crack further. "So instead of talking to me, you decided to cheat. You could have come to me with your feelings, Melissa, but you chose to betray me instead." She wiped her tears, desperation written all over her face as she tried to explain herself. "I was wrong, Jake. I know that now. I didn't think I'd fall for him." "Fall for him?" I echoed incredulously. "What about us? What about everything we've built together? Was it all just a joke to you?" Her silence spoke volumes, and I knew in that moment that she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I was filled with a mix of anger and sadness, realizing that I had to make a decision about our future. I was at a crossroads, and I needed to figure out what I wanted long before I could think about revenge. That night, I went home, feeling like a ghost in my own house. I replayed our conversation over and over in my head. I was lost, betrayed, and confused. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep living like this. The old plans for our future felt shattered, and I had to start thinking about what came next. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of my journey toward a new life, one that didn't include her. As I sat in the silence of my home, the weight of the betrayal pressed heavily on my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that the life I had built with Melissa was crumbling around me. I had always imagined our future together, buying a house, starting a family, growing old side by side. Now all those dreams felt like a cruel joke. I needed to protect myself, to figure out a way to take back control of my life. The next day, I decided to take a different approach. Instead of wallowing in my pain, I started to think strategically. It was time to plan my revenge, not revenge in a way that would hurt her physically or emotionally, but something that would give me the peace and closure I needed. I needed to reclaim my life. I began to document everything. Every conversation we had, every lie she told, every moment of doubt and betrayal. I made a folder on my computer titled Evidence, and I filled it with screenshots from her social media, pictures of her and the guy at the concert, and notes on how she had changed over the months. I wanted to ensure that I had a clear picture of what had happened, so if it came down to it, I could confront her with all the facts. But I didn't stop there. I reached out to some friends and family, those who I knew would support me, and confided in them about what was going on. It helped to talk about it, to share the burden of heartbreak. My best friend, Sam, was particularly supportive. He listened patiently and offered advice that I could cling to. "You deserve better than this, man. You need to focus on yourself and what you want. Melissa has shown you who she really is. Don't let her dictate your happiness." I began to focus on myself, channeling my grief into self-improvement. I started hitting the gym more often, finding solace in the sweat and physical exertion. I also picked up old hobbies that I had neglected while trying to accommodate Melissa's whims. I started sketching ideas for my dream projects and even signed up for a weekend course on sustainable architecture. Slowly, I started feeling more like myself. I was reclaiming my identity outside of our marriage, and it felt liberating. I began to realize that I didn't need to be defined by the relationship. I was Jake, an architect with dreams and aspirations, and I could build a future without her. But as I started to rebuild my life, the thoughts of revenge still lingered. I couldn't just let her walk away without feeling the consequences of her actions. I wanted her to understand the impact of her choices, to feel a fraction of the pain I had endured. I spent time crafting a plan, one that would make her realize the gravity of her betrayal. I decided to invite Melissa out for dinner. I told her it was to talk about us and the future of our marriage. I wanted her to come with the expectation that we would discuss reconciliation. In reality, I was planning to lay everything out on the table and let her know that I was moving on, but I would do it in a way that would shock her. The day arrived, and I felt a mixture of excitement and dread. I chose a nice restaurant, one that had been a favorite spot for us during happier times. When she arrived, she looked radiant, her hair falling perfectly over her shoulders, but I could see the hint of anxiety in her eyes. She knew something was off. We sat down and I ordered a bottle of wine to ease the tension. As we clinked glasses, I could see her trying to read my expression, searching for clues about what I was about to say. "So, Jake, what did you want to talk about?" she asked, her voice a mix of uncertainty and hope. "Well, Melissa," I began, "I think we both know that things can't go back to the way they were. You've made choices that have damaged our relationship beyond repair." Her expression shifted, the confidence fading as she realized where this was headed. "I know I messed up, Jake. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. Can we just talk about this?" "I've given it a lot of thought," I replied, my tone calm but firm. "I've documented everything, the lies, the deceit, the infidelity. I have pictures of you and him, messages, everything. I can't be with someone who doesn't respect our marriage. I'm done." Her eyes widened in shock, and I could see her struggling to process my words. "You can't be serious. We can work it out," she pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. "I didn't come here to negotiate," I said, cutting her off. "I've made my decision. I'm filing for divorce." The silence that hung between us was deafening. She looked like someone had knocked the wind out of her. I could see the realization sinking in, the gravity of her actions hitting her like a ton of bricks. "I can't believe you're doing this," she whispered, visibly shaken. "You were supposed to be my partner." I felt a fleeting moment of sadness for the girl I once loved, but it was quickly overshadowed by the relief of taking control of my life back. "I was your partner," I said, my voice steady. "But you chose a different path. Now I'm choosing mine." As the evening wore on, I watched her scramble for excuses, for ways to manipulate the situation in her favor. But I was resolved. I had made my choice and I was committed to seeing it through. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to move on. The moment I stepped out of that restaurant, I felt a weight lifting. I had taken a definitive step towards my own peace, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was on my way to rebuilding my life, one brick at a time, and I couldn't look back. The weeks following my confrontation with Melissa were a whirlwind. I filed for divorce and the process felt surreal. I had never expected to be in this position, and yet here I was, navigating the legalities of ending a chapter that I thought would last a lifetime. I made sure to consult a lawyer who specialized in divorce cases, ensuring I understood my rights and what I needed to do to protect myself. It was almost like planning a project at work. Only this time the stakes were much higher and the emotional toll was undeniable. Telling my family about the divorce was one of the hardest things I had to do. I knew they had loved Melissa, and I could see the disappointment in their eyes when I shared the news. My mom wanted to know if there was any chance of reconciliation, and my dad, ever the practical one, urged me to focus on my future. "You deserve someone who truly values you, Jake," he said, and that resonated deep within me. I began to set boundaries with Melissa. We agreed to meet at designated times to discuss the logistics of the divorce, but I made it clear that I wasn't interested in engaging in emotional conversations. I didn't want to reopen wounds that were starting to heal. Instead, I focused on getting my life back in order. Between work and the divorce proceedings, I devoted my free time to personal growth. I spent more hours at the gym, pouring my energy into physical fitness. I rediscovered my passion for architecture and began sketching designs as a way to channel my frustrations. I even started dating again, albeit casually, just to remind myself that there were good people out there. I wasn't looking for anything serious, but it felt good to connect with others again. One day, while I was at the gym, I met a woman named Sarah. She was a fellow gym-goer, and we struck up a conversation while waiting for our turn at a squat rack. She was kind, funny, and had a spark in her eye that drew me in. We exchanged numbers, and I felt a small spark of excitement, something I hadn't felt in a long time. We began hanging out more, sharing dinners and laughs, and while I was still processing my emotions about the divorce, it felt refreshing to connect with someone new. Meanwhile, Melissa was doing everything she could to manipulate the situation. She would frequently text me with apologies and promises of change, trying to elicit sympathy. "I miss you, Jake. I can't believe I let it get this far. I promise I'll do better." It was infuriating. Each time I received a message like that, I'd feel a mix of anger and pity. She had made her choice, and no amount of pleading would change my mind. One evening, she showed up unannounced at my apartment. I was in the middle of cooking dinner and the surprise visit threw me off balance. I opened the door and there she was, looking vulnerable and lost. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice trembling. I hesitated. I had set boundaries for a reason. "Melissa, I don't think that's a good idea. We're in the middle of a divorce and I need space to heal. Please just hear me out," she insisted. "I'm not asking for us to get back together, but I need you to know how sorry I am." I stepped aside, allowing her to enter, but my heart was racing. I knew this could be a dangerous conversation. "Fine, but make it quick." She began to speak, her voice breaking as she recounted her feelings of loneliness and regret. "I didn't realize how much I needed you until I lost you. I let my insecurities drive me to make terrible decisions." I felt a rush of emotions, anger, sadness, but also a glimmer of compassion. "But you didn't just make a mistake, Melissa. You chose to betray my trust. You chose him over me." I know. I was so caught up in the thrill of it all. "I thought I wanted something different, but all I want now is you," she said, desperation creeping into her tone. "Do you even hear yourself?" I shot back. "You made those choices. You can't play the victim now." The conversation spiraled, with her attempting to justify her actions and me pushing back against every excuse she offered. In the end, it felt like a futile exercise. I realized she was trying to manipulate my emotions, to coax sympathy out of me, but I was no longer the vulnerable husband who would fall for her charm. I was becoming a stronger version of myself. After a tense hour, I finally stood my ground. "I'm sorry, Melissa, but this isn't about us anymore. I need to focus on moving forward with my life, and that means letting you go." She looked defeated, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sadness for the woman I once loved. But then I remembered the betrayal, the heartbreak, and I steeled myself. I had to remind myself why I was doing this. As she left my apartment that night, I felt a strange sense of closure. I was finally taking control of my narrative, no longer allowing her to dictate how I felt or what I did. I had learned the hard way what betrayal looked like, and now I was determined to rebuild my life on my own terms, brick by brick. The next few weeks flew by as the divorce proceedings continued. I was focused and determined to move forward. I spent more time with Sarah, enjoying her company without the shadows of my past looming over me. It felt good to laugh again, to share stories and experiences that weren't tainted by memories of Melissa. In the end, I was learning that while the pain of betrayal was deep, it could also be a catalyst for growth. I started to see the silver lining in my situation. I was learning more about myself than I ever thought possible. I was ready to embrace my new life, no longer bound by the weight of my past. And as I looked forward, I felt a sense of hope that I hadn't felt in months. I was ready to build a new future, one that was mine alone. The final stages of the divorce process felt both freeing and terrifying. I was ready to close the door on my marriage with Melissa, yet there was a lingering sense of uncertainty about the future. I had spent so much time focused on the betrayal that I hadn't fully grasped the potential for new beginnings. With each passing day, I was carving out a new identity for myself. As the divorce date approached, I found myself reminiscing about the lessons learned. I had spent years building a life with someone who ultimately took me for granted, and now I had a newfound appreciation for the importance of self-worth and honesty. I understood that I had to prioritize my happiness above all else, and that meant letting go of any lingering feelings for Melissa. The day finally came when we were to finalize the divorce. I arrived at the courthouse, heart racing as I walked through the sterile halls. The weight of the decision felt heavy, but I told myself that this was the final step toward reclaiming my life. I checked in, and soon enough Melissa arrived. She looked as if she had been crying, and I felt a pang of sympathy. I hadn't completely shut off my emotions. After all, we had shared so much. "Jake," she said softly, her voice shaky, "I know this is hard for both of us. I just want to say that I'm sorry once again for everything." I nodded, trying to maintain my composure. "I appreciate it, but this is something we both need to move on from." We were called into the courtroom, and as we sat across from each other, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. The judge went through the paperwork, and I could see Melissa's expression shift from remorse to anxiety. She was visibly struggling with the reality of what was happening. When it came time to sign the documents, it felt surreal. I held the pen in my hand, every stroke a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. I looked up at Melissa, her eyes glistening with tears. I wondered if she was having any second thoughts or if she was simply feeling the weight of the consequences of her actions. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, fighting the urge to let my feelings sway me. "I've never been more sure about anything in my life. This is what I need to move forward." With that, I signed my name. I could feel the finality of the moment wash over me. It was as if a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders, and yet a part of me mourned the loss of the dream we had once shared. The judge concluded the proceedings with a few formalities, and just like that, my marriage was over. As we exited the courthouse, I felt a sense of liberation. The sun shone down on me, and it felt like a new beginning. I had made it through the storm, and now was ready to embrace whatever the future held. Melissa and I didn't exchange words as we left. I could see the tears streaming down her face, and for a brief moment I felt the weight of our shared history. But I quickly reminded myself of why I had made this decision. I refused to let her sorrow drag me back into a cycle of guilt and regret. That evening, I met up with Sam to celebrate my newfound freedom. We hit a local bar, and he raised a glass to my bravery. "Here to new beginnings. You did it, man," he said, and I couldn't help but smile. As the night wore on, I shared my thoughts about the future. "I feel like this is a turning point for me. I don't want to rush things, but I'm excited about what's to come." Sam nodded, his eyes filled with encouragement. "You deserve happiness, Jake. Take your time and figure out what you want. Just remember, you're not alone in this." With every sip of beer and every laugh shared, I felt more grounded. I realized that I had a support system that I could lean on, and it made the journey ahead seem less daunting. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I continued to date Sarah casually, enjoying her company without the shadows of my past looming over me. We explored new restaurants, went hiking, and I found myself laughing again. It felt good to be in a healthy, uncomplicated relationship, even if it was just in its infancy. As time passed, I started to envision a future that was entirely my own. I began to dream again, big ambitions for my career and personal life. I set new goals both professionally and personally, and I found a renewed enthusiasm for life. I was no longer the man defined by betrayal. I was the architect of my destiny. One evening, while working late in my office, I was struck with a brilliant idea for a project that focused on sustainable living. It was the kind of work that had always inspired me, and I dove headfirst into research and design. I could feel the excitement bubbling within me as I poured my energy into this new venture, knowing that I was building something meaningful. Reflecting on everything that had transpired, I understood that the pain of the past had transformed me. It taught me resilience and self-worth. I had learned to prioritize myself and my happiness, and in doing so, I felt empowered to face whatever challenges might come my way. I looked forward to the future with hope and determination. The journey had been tumultuous, but I was grateful for the lessons learned. I knew that I was capable of creating the life I wanted, one that was filled with love, respect, and a sense of purpose. And as I looked ahead, I realized that I was ready to embrace this chapter with open arms. With every passing day, I felt more at peace with my decisions. I had taken the painful experience of betrayal and turned it into a powerful catalyst for growth. I was ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that I had the strength to build a brighter future, one that was mine alone. As the months rolled by, I continued to grow and redefine what happiness meant to me. I immersed myself in my work, putting all my energy into the sustainable architecture project that had ignited my passion. My design started to gain attention, and I was even approached by a few investors who believed in the vision I was creating. Each step felt like a small victory, a testament to how far I had come from the emotional wreckage of my marriage. My relationship with Sarah blossomed, though I remained cautious. I valued the simplicity of our connection, free from the heavy baggage I had carried for so long. We enjoyed each other's company, sharing dreams, aspirations, and laughter without any pretense. It was a refreshing change of pace from the turmoil I had endured. With Sarah, I felt like I could be my authentic self, unburdened by past failures. One evening, while we were enjoying dinner at a cozy little Italian restaurant, Sarah looked across the table at me, a curious expression on her face. "What's next for you, Jake?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with genuine interest. I paused for a moment, considering her question. "I want to build a life where I can continue to pursue my passions and maintain healthy relationships." I leaned back in my chair, feeling a sense of clarity wash over me. "And I want to make a difference in the world, create spaces that are sustainable, and showcase the beauty of our environment." She smiled, and I could see the enthusiasm in her eyes. "You're going to do great things, Jake. I believe in you." Her encouragement fueled my resolve, pushing me to dream even bigger. As I poured myself into my work, I also took time to reflect on my journey. I realized how crucial it was to learn from my past mistakes. I had allowed myself to be vulnerable, to love deeply, and ultimately to be hurt. But now I was committed to building relationships grounded in honesty, respect, and mutual support. One particular afternoon, I decided to take a trip to a nearby park that held fond memories from my time with Melissa. It was a place we would go for picnics, where we laughed and shared dreams before everything fell apart. I wanted to return, not to dwell on the past, but to reclaim it and find closure. As I walked through the park, memories flooded my mind, some bittersweet, but I felt a sense of liberation as I acknowledged them. Sitting on a bench, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I let go of the pain associated With those memories, accepting that they were part of my journey but didn't define me, I felt at peace with the choices I had made, the strength I had gained, and the lessons I had learned. I realized that for every painful experience, there was an opportunity for growth. My heart had been shattered but had slowly rebuilt itself, stronger and more resilient than before. I was no longer the man who let betrayal dictate his sense of self. I was the architect of my own life, and I had the power to design my future. In the weeks that followed, I received an offer to present my sustainable architecture project at a prominent conference. It felt like a pivotal moment, a chance to share my vision with a larger audience and possibly launch my career. The opportunity was both thrilling and terrifying, but I understood that this was a moment I had worked hard for. I was ready to step into the spotlight. The day of the conference arrived, and I found myself standing on stage in front of a room filled with people. My heart raced as I shared my project, detailing the importance of sustainability and how it could reshape our communities. I spoke passionately, fueled by the knowledge that I was truly pursuing something meaningful. As I concluded my presentation, the applause that followed filled me with an indescribable sense of accomplishment. I had poured my heart and soul into this project, and it felt validating to see my hard work recognized. After the event, I was approached by several individuals interested in collaborating. It was a turning point, and I knew that the journey I had embarked on was just beginning. I had faced heartbreak, betrayal, and uncertainty, but I had emerged on the other side, ready to embrace life with open arms. Reflecting on the path that had led me here, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the experience. It was difficult to accept, but the pain had propelled me toward growth. I had learned to prioritize myself, to be true to my passions, and to let go of what no longer served me. The betrayal had been a catalyst for change, and in its wake I found empowerment. As I entered this new chapter of my life, I knew that love would come again when the time was right. For now, I was focused on nurturing my dreams, building my career, and enjoying the simple joys each day brought. I had learned that I was capable of so much more than I had ever imagined, and I was ready to embrace whatever the future held. Life was no longer about the designs I had made with someone else. It was about the blueprints I was creating for my own happiness. I had taken the fragments of my past and transformed them into a solid foundation for my future. And with each new project, each new relationship, and each new day, I was building a life that was truly my own.